Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 778. My opponent started off with e4 here, and I went with d5, the Scandinavian defense. So he took, which is the main move, and then I play knight f6. That's the line in the Scandinavian I like to play, although queen takes d5 is also quite playable. And then here the main move is d4. And all these moves lead to an advantage. I think that the best moves are d4, and just giving the pawn back, but getting room in the center. Or you can sort of delay that d4 move by playing knight f3. And there's even this interesting, that's knight f3, and there's this interesting bishop to b5 check line, which also leads to an advantage to white. So all of those are good moves. But the move that my opponent played is not something I can recommend. It doesn't seem to create any troubles. Well, we're out of the opening book there. Doesn't seem to create any troubles for black. Black has a number of ways to take the pawn. You can take with the e-pawn, the c-pawn, or the queen, and they all seem to be good for black. The chess engine even likes the move e5 here, just turning it into a pawn sec. Kind of an interesting idea. e5, pawn takes, queen takes, and well, let's see. Yeah, black is down a pawn, but he's got the only center pawn at the moment, only pawn in the center. I guess white will be able to challenge with d4 at some point. And he's got better development. So the chess engine rates this as equal, which means black has compensation for the pawn. But I just played with c takes. So that's one of the ways to play that leads to pretty much equality for black. So we continue with some normal moves here. I go bishop f5, getting my bishop outside the pawn chain before playing e6. My opponent played h3, which is a really slow move, and at this point actually the chess engine starts to give an advantage to black, although I play some slow moves too, so really we stay in the range of equality here for a while. But just to point out moves that keep the game equal, knight f3 is fine, and bishop d3. Those are both okay moves for black, or for white. So h3 though, maybe black has the advantage now. Sort of white's given the opening advantage away and given it to black. Okay, so e6, I just want to open up some squares for my bishop and my dark squared bishop, and I've got the bishop outside the pawn chain. So this is good for black still. And then h6, this is a slow move. So I have to say, I just wanted to create a square for my bishop to hide away in if he ever plays knight to h4, which is nice to be able to keep the bishop here, but maybe not absolutely necessary. And like I said, it's a slow move. So so at this point, it's back to the range of about even. Let's see. So we keep developing few normal developing moves, and now this h3 move starts to make some sense because he's got a hideaway square for his bishop. So these h6 and h3 moves, I guess, have been justified, or at least they're no one got an advantage out of them because we both played them. Okay, let's see. I castled here. He castled. Go knight c6. All pretty normal development. He goes knight bd2. And then knight bd2 maybe it's a little mistake. The chess engine says once again I can start to get an advantage with this move knight to b4. I wasn't sure what I would do if he just kicked it with c3, but the chess engine says the knight can hop into this d3 square, which looks like that might be pretty annoying. Well, sometimes I have trouble playing like this because I'm not sure if that knight here, if I don't see the immediate tactic, I'm not sure if it's going to be a liability or an asset, but it is immediately threatening the b pawn, I guess. And if he defends that, I have time to bring my rook out. Yeah, I'm threatening the bishop too. Okay, so maybe it just wins a pawn because I'm hitting the bishop and hitting here, or winning the bishop pair because he can trade at this point too. Anyway, I also would have to worry about, can my knight escape from the square? But it looks like it can come out via a4 if there is no other route out. Yeah, I'm still not sure. Anyway, I didn't play that way. I went with d5. So back in the range of about even, I guess. just opening up things for my bishop, stopping his pawns from coming forward. Although I should point out that white playing d5 was not so much of a threat. Well, if this knight were not here, then you could always answer d5 with e5. But I guess with the knight there, it's kind of annoying, that d5 move. So I played d5 myself. He went rook e1. And now, let's see, yeah, he should have, now knight b4 is actually wins some material. So I just wasn't thinking of this idea during the game, I guess. But yeah, I'm just threatening to take on c2 and fork the two rooks, since he conveniently moved that rook to e1. So c3 doesn't help in this case. And the chess engine gives the best line is actually this one, rook to c1, defending c2, and then knight takes. So just dumping a pawn like that and playing on with advantage to black. So let's see. So rook e1 was a mistake. He could have played c3 instead, and that would have been fine for white. Oh, well, even, as I was saying before. Anyway, he went c3. I went bishop d6, neglecting the opportunity to play knight b4. And so we're back in the range of around even. And let's see, he plays some slow moves here. I keep a slight edge throughout this part of the game. I finally see the knight b4 move, but actually at this point it's not doing a whole lot. I was thinking, yeah, I'm not sure what I was thinking. Anyway, he played knight e3 first, kicking the bishop. I guess I was thinking maybe I could drop into some of these squares if he pushed the pawn forward. Yeah, that's right. I had knight to c2 once again if he played c3, but he played this move first, which hits my bishop and defends c2. So I drop the bishop back, and then he plays c3. And now that defense from white was sufficient to force me to move my knight back. So I didn't really gain much by that knight b4 maneuver, whereas in the other cases he didn't have this chance. Let's see. So he continues with knight g4. Played knight h5. I decided I didn't want to allow the trade. Also would kind of mess up my pawn structure there. And I'm looking at this f4 square. I played knight h5, looking at the f4 square. So he went knight g to e5, plunking his knight down on a good square. I drop into f4 anyway. Even though it's not supported by the queen, it still seems like it's not under attack. So it's a loose piece there, but as long as there's no tactic, it's okay. And I can drop back to this square to challenge his knight on e5. So he played bishop f1, preserving his bishop pair, and I just play f6, kicking the knight back. So the knight went back to g4, and then I brought my rook to the e file, so centralizing my rooks to the e file. Yeah, I'm thinking of pushing this pawn forward, gaining some more space in the center. Plays a4, looking for some play on the queen side, and now I go e5. So I think this is starting to be an advantage for black again. Let's see, he played d takes e5, f takes e5, because I am building up this big center, and it's not so easy for him to undermine. And in fact, this move bishop c4 is a mistake. The chess engine gives g3 here as the way to play it. g3, kicking the knight, and then bishop to g2. And the knight comes around to f6, and it seems like there's some edge to black here, a little more space in the center, but white should be okay. So bishop c4, a clever move, taking advantage of the pin. You have to always look around when your opponent plays a clever move to see if there's some way to refute it. I really did not see it, any way to refute it, and I just played the move queen c5, which keeps an advantage to black. So black has a significant edge by this point in the game, but the chess engine finds a kind of a long-winded way, but a way that actually wins some material from here. So I thought it would just be interesting to show you. It's too long. I would not expect anyone to be able to figure this out over the board. Even in a slow game, it might be difficult to compute all of this, but it's interesting. It's kind of a forcing sequence. So starting with e4, kicking the knight. So the knight goes to, oh, actually the recommended move was knight h2. Then h4, kicking the other knight, or h5, kicking the other knight. The knight goes to e3, which, I would think that I'm kind of helping my opponent by putting this knight on a good square, but I did kind of kick this knight away. But now he's starting to gang up on this pawn, so that's why it's kind of hard to see this. But queen g6. Now finally we've unpinned this pawn, so we're actually threatening to take the bishop, and at the same time we're threatening knight takes h3 check. So that's the idea, I guess, is that you play a couple of preparatory moves as two pawn pushes, force your opponent's pieces into an awkward position, and then you're in a situation where you can unpin with tempo by making a threat. So you unpin, so you're attacking the bishop and you're attacking on h3. So it is a double attack, but it seems like also, even if I had seen ahead this far, it seems like white can escape because he brought his knight to e3, so he can just take that pawn, and I moved my queen away in any case. So bishop takes d5 check, king moves out of the way, but after the king moves, there's still this threat on h3, so white needs to deal with that. And then you can pin the pawn, pin the bishop, and start to build up pressure on the bishop. So what's the count? Just for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so at the moment black is a pawn down, but well, after white secures the bishop, this knight can hop into this knight can hop into d3. That d3 square was available anyway, so other moves also allow this this trick. And the knight comes into d3 with a hit on the rook. The rook moves to defend the f-pawn, but the knight can take on f2 anyway because the rook on the open f file. And so this wins the exchange. So like I said, it's kind of a long-winded variation. You had to see, like, let's count 1, 2. The two pawn pushes, queen g6, that's 3. King h8 after bishop takes d5, that's 4. Rook d8, 5. Knight d3, 6. Yeah. So that's and knight takes f2. That's 7 moves ahead, not counting the final exchange there. So that's a pretty deep calculation, which well, it shows why chess engines are so good. But there are some ideas there that you can think about if you're looking for ways to take advantage of this kind of situation where your opponent has played a clever move depending on a tactic, you know, depending on a pin. You look for ways to unpin with tempo, and you know, if you can push a few pawns and then unpin with tempo, that's going to be winning you some material. So a clever way to deal with your opponent's clever move. Anyway, I just went queen c5. I unpinned the pawn, and it's still defended here. I'm not sure what he missed. This is where actually the game pretty much ends. He could just retreat his bishop or go to b5. That's the chess engine's preference. And like I said, there's still an edge for black in this position. I have the big center, but the material is even. Let's see, and rook e7 to unpin the knight and prepare to double. So yeah, black has a definite edge here, but well, white can still play on, and it's not clear if black is winning yet, but you know, he's got a good middle game. So that's the way white should have played it. Instead, he took. Maybe he thought when I moved the queen, I was no longer defending the pawn or something. In any case, the queen was defending the pawn, and as well as the knight. So I just take the bishop, and I'm a piece up. So the best way to play this is to allow the queen trade. I can see why he didn't do this, but anyway, this is the best line. The chess engine says queen takes, knight takes, and then he gets a pawn. So he gets, you know, 2 pawns for the piece. Oh, knight g takes e5. Okay, then knight takes. But we're into an endgame where I have an extra piece, and I don't have any difficulties. My pieces are all active, and I'll be able to use that to round up the pawn. So this should be a winning endgame for me, and fairly simple. So, you know, you don't want to go into a simple position like that if you want to keep on playing. So you want to try and make it more complicated. The problem is there's no good square for the queen. Everywhere it goes, it either gets taken immediately, like the bishop is covering those squares, the knight's covering that square, the queen's covering that square, bishop, knight. Anywhere along here it gets traded, and the bishop's covering that square. So the only square that the queen has that it can go to avoid a trade is the move he played, queen c1. You know, any other moves allow the trade where I could just take the queen. And that falls into this fork. There were even better moves here, actually. The chess engine likes the knight sacrifice on g2, which looks like interesting way to play as well. I guess the point is after king takes, I can bring the bishop in and pile up on that pin knight. Anyway, yeah, I don't know how that would go, but this is good enough. And so after this, I'm a rook up, not just a piece up. So let's just go through the rest of the game. I mean, the game lasted surprisingly a long time, but with all this force on the board, it was kind of tricky to make sure I wasn't blundering some major pieces. So there's a little bit of repetition there, but I'm just trying to find ways to make threats without taking on unnecessary risks myself and getting into awkward positions. And so it's just some maneuvering. Yeah, and finally I won the queen there, so I start to breathe a little easier there. Yeah, I'd set up this tactic, and he didn't respond to it, but kind of a clever tactic to always be on the lookout for things like that. So yeah, I'm a whole queen up at this point, but it still it keeps playing, and I still have to make the time control. So the game itself was more interesting, just to see if I could make all these moves in time, which I eventually managed to do. So at some point here, yeah, at this point it gets simple enough that he wasn't trying to, he gave up trying to win on time, or yeah, I guess he was trying to win on time, and resign. So anyway, it was an interesting game, kind of fun, and see you guys later. Bye.